Good afternoon. This is Mr. David Pope here talking about my educational philosophy. What is my educational philosophy? Obviously, this is not the operative question with which I ought to begin this video. The appropriate question more likely would be, what is an educational philosophy? There are 4 different educational philosophies identified in the textbook for the Introduction to Education course, Those Who Can Teach, by Kevin Ryan and James M. Cooper. Now, I ought to withhold my snide little commentary, but I won't. Those who can't teach anyway, mostly because they're not qualified to do anything else. This is sad, but unfortunately very true. In any case, this textbook identifies the 4 educational philosophies: Perennialism, Essentialism, Romanticism, and Progressivism. Certain educational websites on the internet list different philosophies or use different technical terms, but they all fall along the same general themes, so these are the ones I will use. To summarize, perennialism means to fall back to 3 R's of basic education: reading, writing, and arithmetic. And naturally, we'll excuse the fact that neither writing nor the arithmetic begin with the letter R. A perennialist would be required to be a subject matter expert, relying heavily on bookwork, lectures, and texts to impart knowledge into his students. This type of educational philosophy is as obsolete as dunce caps and corporal punishment, but it seems to be the one type of philosophy that forms the backbone of the No Child Left Behind legislation. The government is trying to force teachers to become perennialists regardless of the techniques that are needed to successfully teach the next generation of students. Essentialism means to teach from the core curriculum in order to develop certain important skill sets that would be needed later in the students' lives. They want to mold the students into what they need to be in order to be successful members of society. In short, this type of teacher wants to teach what is essential for the students so they can meet the needs of what is essential for overall society. Romanticism tends to disregard textbooks and lectures in order to draw upon the students' real-life experiences. This type of teacher relies heavily on the knowledge the student already has and helps the students apply this knowledge. This teacher will most likely use alternate teaching methods in order to impart experiential knowledge rather than force his students to follow a standard curriculum. Progressivism is a student-centric method of education that focuses on problem-solving and critical thinking in order to prepare students for what they will face in real life. A progressivist is most successful teaching secondary-level students or high school-level students who already have a clear understanding about what they expect to gain from their education and what goals they expect to obtain. These teachers are more often facilitators rather than lecturers, finding themselves far more willing to help their students beat their own paths into the wilderness than to force them to walk along the lighted highway. In my opinion, each of these educational philosophies are equally valid and would be acceptable depending on the mission of the school, the grade levels, the curriculum being taught, and the specific talents and abilities of the students themselves. But all things being equal, I feel obligated to give Essentialism a little bit of extra credit and grade all the other ones on the curve. My educational philosophy may be remembered with this little mnemonic device. Essentially, I am an essentialist. I believe that the greatest duty that we have as educators is to prepare our students to take their place in society and make a positive and lasting impact on the world around them. As far as curriculum is concerned, I tend to follow the Big 5 theory of education, which is defined as literature, mathematics, physical science, social science, and humanities. Obviously, my classroom would fulfill the social science aspect of the Big 5 educational curriculum, but any course that is taught would have to synchronize with the other areas of the curriculum. For example, you can't properly teach a history course without reading a great number of historical documents, which is literature. Economics is the very study of merging mathematics with social science. History is also closely tied with advances in technology and the use of resources, which is physical science. And finally, no study of history would be complete without delving into matters of historical artwork, films, music, poetry, many of which has changed the course of history. Now, this may be true, but what about a non-academic career? How would something like, say, automotives fall within the Big Five curriculum? Of course, literature is important, as you cannot be effective as a mechanic if you cannot read everything from technical publications to customer orders to trade magazines. It's fairly obvious that the study of mathematics and physical science go hand in hand with success in the automotive sector. Social science is also important when studying the evolution of machinery and mechanics. Which good mechanic does not spend hours upon hours reading and researching the difference between a 54 Oldsmobile and a 55 Oldsmobile, when nobody else can tell the difference between the two? Then there's humanities. While most people cannot find any league between automotives and humanities, I certainly can. Now you look me dead in the eye and tell me that today's automobiles are not works of art. Tell me that the difference between a good mechanic and a great mechanic has nothing to do with his ability to install a high-quality sound system that can play classic rock with the dial turned as far to the right as it can possibly go.
Hey! Teacher! Leave them kids alone! All in all, it's just another brick in the wall. All in all, you're just another brick in the wall.
The same holds true for any other potential career choice. We must prepare our students for the future roles in society, even if it means we have to alter our own educational styles to meet the needs of individual students. This is why I'm not married to the idea of essentialism. What might be effective with one student or one classroom, or even one particular course, might not be effective in a different setting. Perhaps, then, the best educational philosophy ought to be improv.
Improv?
Improv.
Improv. Improv.
Improv.
Improv.
An effective teacher has to be able to bounce from one subject to the next on cue, switching around his style of teaching to meet the needs of his students, even though those needs may change from one day to the next, one student to the next, or one class to the next. Today he may be a perennialist, teaching a lecture or administering a test. The next day he may become an essentialist, discussing potential careers that use the knowledge the students are studying. The day after he moves to Romanticism, when a student sidetracks him with a probing question that leads him to a class discussion. Finally, the next day he becomes a progressivist, when he divides the class into groups to try to solve a difficult problem requiring critical thinking and application. And the next week will be completely different. Whatever a teacher's educational philosophy may be, or even what my own educational philosophy may be by the end of my teaching career, we must remember that the most important aspect of any classroom has nothing to do with the teacher. It has nothing to do with textbooks. It has nothing to do with the curriculum. It has nothing to do with whether or not the internet is working today. The most important aspect of any classroom is the student himself. If our students are not learning, the teachers have failed. In regards to academic expectations, I draw my inspiration from the late Jaime Escalante, the Bolivian-born math teacher at Garfield High School in Los Angeles. You may recall that he is the person Edward James almost portrayed and the 1988 movie Stand and Deliver. By the way, I highly recommend this movie for any aspiring teacher. Jaime Escalante said, "Students will rise to the level of expectation."
Don't laugh.
How could we laugh? You're breaking our hearts.
Don't do this, Kimo.
I mean, how noble. To sacrifice himself for the benefit of the team. Do you have the ganas? Do you have the desire?
Yes, I have the ganas.
Do you want me to do it for you?
Yes.
You're supposed to say no.
The principle of self-fulfilling prophecy dictates that our students will perform at exactly the level the teachers expect them to. If our expectations are high, then our students will exhaust every resource necessary to attain them. However, if our expectations are impossibly high, then the students will become demoralized and give up before they reach their goals. We must find a happy medium in which we inspire our students to perform at higher academic standards than they previously thought possible, and help them every step of the way until they cross the finish line. Thank you for allowing me a few moments of your time to explain to you my educational philosophy. My name is Mr. David Pope. I am a history teacher. I hope to see you in the classroom.